Let's talk. I want to answer some questions about Japan and how it's different from Europe. We have those things that people tell me after I come back from Japan. People tell me how it was, what's different, what's special in Japan. This usually fall into category of stereotypes. So basically things that are floating somewhere there on the internet, in the media, in the mass media, in the books. Basically things that are well known and not always correct. It was my intention to get some deeper understanding of this culture, Japanese culture, through study and observation. I scarcely had time to study. I managed to observe some things and put them into some transferable structures, intellectual structures that can be explained and hopefully will be of use to someone. So there is this question that lies in the core of every consideration of the region, basically Far East, because Japanese culture is not separate from Chinese culture, Korean culture, and other cultures in the area. So paradoxically, the most I learned about Japan was a book about Hong Kong called Noble House. And as you know, Hong Kong is not in Japan, but the things and the cultural patterns that emerge in Hong Kong and were described by Mr. James Covey were quintessential for understanding Japanese conditions. The interplay between criminal world, the intelligence world, the business world, the sex and life customs, they were described in Hong Kong, but what was talked about had its counterpart in Japan. Of course, with regional flavor, but essentially these were things characteristic for Far East environment. Let me start with the thing which is at the center of culture, and it's not money or religion or nationalism. In my opinion, at the center of Far Eastern life lies some sort of practical respect for reality. You can call it practical or scientific or common sense, but what it is in essence is that it works. Basically, the litmus paper of things is whether it works, whether it will survive. So if in comparison we would talk about Europe as a idealistic society based on ideas like let's use the example of France and French flag and what the colors stand for: liberty, liberté, fraternity, and yeah, égalité. We don't have a tradition of thinking and tradition of putting things in words in a philosophical manner like we have in Europe. Thinking is reserved for special occupations, i.e. intellectuals. Thinking is reserved for special castes, like for example bureaucratic caste, and so on. There is no practice of discussion, thinking, and disputing ideas and values. The reason why there is no tradition of discussing, because there is nothing to discuss. There is a reality, and reality is undeniable, and whoever denies reality is either foolish or insane. So reality is supported by tradition. That is how reality was perceived and interacted with through the time. So you do not question these things for a simple reason. Would you try to do this? You would stay behind. I wonder if you remember the scene from a movie called In Hatred, where they describe a phenomenon about people who are transported to Siberia. The train transporting people made a brief stops in the snow wilderness to use the toilet, but if you were too slow to jump on the train back, for example, if you didn't want to relieve yourself in public and step away from the train too far, you were left behind because the train, of course, did not wait for you. And similar model can be used to philosophical approach and idealistic habits. Reflection separates you from life, and once you are separated from life, life, like the train in the movie N, may not wait for you, and you may stay behind and perish. So, as I say, Far East is not idealistic, it's not philosophical, it's practical, but not in a trivial way. The respect for reality, the habit of perceiving what is and what not what should be. Let me repeat this: seeing what is and not what should be is a big advantage for Far Eastern civilization and makes it very strong for influence from stupid ideas. We know what's happening in the Western civilization now, how ideas play and are abused and hurt whole sectors of society, but there is virtually no place for that abuse in, say, Japanese society, except for very few Western influenced intellectuals. Japanese mind is impermeable to idealistic values, ideas, and novelty. So, if it's so conservative, how does it discover the depth and the opportunity in reality, in, let's say, business sector, innovation, science? Well, it's achieved, in my opinion, through the practice of observation, through perception that, as is often mentioned in religious Buddhist texts, perception of what is without judging. So there is this idea that if things are the way they are, well, let them be that way, and have to deal with it in some way. It often is applied to social problems. If some people, for example, choose not to work, if some people choose to commit crime, there is no pressure to teach them the right way, because it's known that the way of crime and not working in your life brings predictable ethical results. So after some nominal persuasion, those individuals are left in some isolated social groups to, well, discover the right way, the hard way. So, well, basically, I would say that in a big measure, Far Easterner is cynical. He would consider his own and his group's interests far more important than the need for improvement, the need for fixing the world and fixing people. So this is my insight into Japanese psyche, and not easy to express myself in that domain, but I hope that you found it somewhere north from sheer nonsense, and it will be for some use in some manner. Thank you for staying till the end.